Welcome to America's Policy Podcast. I am your host, Cassandra Alessio, and this is episode 17. I wanted to discuss today about the recent large amounts of layoffs for the federal government and the economy and the cost of living, and just kind of go over some policy ideas for what we hope to see next year, this year, and over the next, 3 to 5 years. Um, I think what's interesting is that we are in this time where we are struggling with keeping the middle class strong. And we see this in the headlines a lot. We talk about the cost of living, housing, food, job security, federal versus private sector. And I think what we are going to see over the next few years is just going to be a lot of changes, right? And some of them are good and some of them are bad. And we have to decide as a society, what do we want to see our future, or what we hope to see our future like? And I think we are in this growing pain phase, right? And I think that there's a lot of change that is needed. And whether we see it now, I don't know. But it's going to be a huge problem now when we have a large amount of layoffs, right? Because when you always think of securing a job, you always have maybe three categories you could break it down by. You have the federal government or state government, local government, county. It's more of a government sector of jobs. Then you have the private sector, and those are the corporations that you're working for, those top 100 companies, or maybe you're working for a small business. You have that section. And then you have the entrepreneurs. The entrepreneurs are the ones that are making up their own business, developing different solutions, inventions, or even, I guess, to some extent, smaller stores and mom and pop shops and different, 1099 kind of jobs. And we have those three categories. Now, typically, and not always, when you are leaving one job, you tend to stay in that category. And that's not always the case, except entrepreneurs. Usually, sometimes people leave the private sector and go into become their own entrepreneur or open up their own business. Maybe they were doing some type of, I don't know, whatever field they're in, and then they want to expand and go work for themselves, right? On a smaller level or a smaller scale. So we have that. And now that we have a large amount of government employees leaving the sector, and now they're going to probably compete with those in the private sector. Unless they maybe would think about transitioning to maybe local government or state government, or being their own boss and being their own entrepreneur and working for themselves, or maybe they want to open their own company and maybe work on a smaller scale for whatever they were doing on a bigger level. So now we're going to have a huge problem in the job sector, because now we're going to have a lot more competition. There's going to be a lot more people heading towards one section, and that's going to be the private sector. And we've seen this before because we've already seen job cuts in the private sector. You've been hearing about it from car companies and these big conglomerates cutting back on staff. And then you're also hearing about how they're trying to take away remote work or limit remote work. And that's becoming a disaster because they just don't have the space and it's just not feasible. So we have a huge problem. Now, the issue that's going to probably arise is that when you have multiple problems simultaneously, there's going to be a lot of bumps in the road. And we're going to see that a lot more. And how, as a society, from a federal and state policy perspective, kind of ease the burden for everyone involved. And I think that's going to be hard for the states, because there's only so much you could do at a federal level, especially because of what's going on. It seems to be very out of ordinary for everything that's going on a federal level. And what do people need to do? Because the reality is, in order to have a successful economy, you need money to move. You need money to continue through society.